to talk this morning about deep impact and awakening. And some of you may remember that is the title of a movie that came out probably 20, 25 years ago or so. And I liked the title, but the movie had some merit. It was not a great movie, but it was a movie about a comet hurtling toward Earth, barreling through space and hurtling toward Earth and threatening to devastate the world. And a variety of characters were facing imminent destruction. That was the theme: annihilation, how they coped with it, attitudes, things that were happening in their lives, and various personal issues. One human theme that ran through it was that with each of the people that the movie illuminated, it took the threat of losing everything to begin to, and indeed losing their very lives, for each person to be able to and willing to see and appreciate what they had. And I took that, I don't even remember what happened in the end of the movie, I just remember that theme running through the movie. So this morning I want to take a closer look at this idea of awakening. And how can we awaken? And do we need to awaken? And do we want to awaken? And all the aspects of awakening. And see what spiritual insights I can offer. So I have to tell you that when I was a little girl, I was pretty isolated in the environment I grew up in, and I was pretty alone, and I watched around. I was a watcher. I absorbed everything, and I watched adults, I watched people. I have to tell you, I didn't want to grow up, because what I saw as a child in adults was adults that overcomplicated life, that made problems where they didn't need to exist, and who struggled so much. That's what I saw in adulthood, and I went, I don't want to grow up. That's what I saw around me. So I haven't grown up. Yeah, well, unfortunately, inevitably we do grow up. But I remember walking to the bus stop one day, because I had about a quarter-mile walk, because I lived in a rural setting. I had about a quarter-mile walk to a place where the bus would pick me up. And I remember walking, and when I walked, the dog was next to me, and I enjoyed the outdoors because we lived in, as I said, a rural setting, and I used to like that walk in the morning. So I would walk, and I was thinking a lot, because I troubled family and all that sort of thing. And I was thinking, the problem I saw with adults was that they took it for granted. They took life for granted. They took it all for granted, because I thought life was pretty terrific. I was thinking the sun is shining, the butterflies are flying around, the dog's next to me and everything, and life is pretty terrific. And I saw that what I thought was people taking it for granted, and I vowed I would never, ever take life for granted. Guess what? I'm as guilty as anyone else. It's very hard not to take life for granted at times. I want to help us maybe not do that. And I'm reminded of a play that I actually starred in high school. It was called Our Town by Thornton Wilder. And some of you may know it. It was about a character named Emily, who I got to play, who dies and gets back. She dies at some point. They show her life for a while, and then she gets married, she has children, she dies. And then she gets to come back for a day. And she can only observe, but she gets to come back and visit her life for a day. So she spends the day going around and observing the important events and stages of her life. And finally, after doing this for a while, she becomes overwhelmed by what she's experiencing, and she refuses to go on. She breaks down sobbing, and she says, I can't go on. It's just too much. It goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. And painfully she continues. She says, I didn't realize. So all that was going on, and we never noticed. And she asks for one more look, and bids goodbye to life, and she says this. She says, goodbye, goodbye, world. Goodbye to Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking, and Mama's sunflowers, and food and coffee, and new iron dresses, and hot baths, and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you are too wonderful for anyone to ever realize you. And finally, she asks the person leading her, she says, do human beings ever realize life while they live it every minute? And of course, the answer to this is no. We don't realize it every minute. But I'm here to say that we can cultivate an awareness, an observer within us, a participant, yes. More participating more fully, yes. And appreciating it more fully every moment, more fully, more often. We can ask ourselves why we tend to get to a place where we don't observe, where we don't see, where we forget how precious it truly is and how wonderful the simple things of life are. The smile of a friend, laughter, hot baths, a good meal, sitting here with wonderful people this morning. How is it we tend to forget that? How is it we tend not to pay attention? How is it we begin to look at the glass as half empty instead of half full? How is it we tend to get trapped in the immediacy of current problems, limitations, restrictions, and how is it that we get stuck sometimes? And I think a lot of it is because of the paradox of our human experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. I believe that strongly. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. The identity that we hold that makes us linked together and the commonality that we have is our spiritual selves, our essence, our true essence, and I'll get more back to that. But being incarnated in this form gives us a convincing illusion of a finite experience. We think that, there seems to have been a beginning, and there certainly seems to be an end to this physical life. And so we have the illusion of finite existence. And you'd think, because we have that life would be very compelling, that we'd be really driven to make the most of every single moment we've got. There's the paradox. Because we go along as if we have an infinite amount of time. We go on to do whatever, and it takes the shape of procrastination or complacency, even apathy at times. Taking everything for granted, and usually waiting for catastrophic or cataclysmic events before we realize what the true value of our lives is, that there's a true value to this life, and move into positive action. Sometimes it takes a serious illness, or a serious financial reversal, or a divorce, or something, or the loss of a loved one, something very, very extreme in our lives. And then we start to ask some serious questions about what is life about. I know that when I was in school, I had a teacher in my 8th or 9th grade. I don't remember his full name. I know that we tagged him with the nickname Jimmy Jet. He was a guy about 28, 30 years old, and he was great with the kids, and he was a really good teacher. And at one point in the class, he said to us, you will at some point in your lives ask the questions, who am I, why am I here, and where am I going? And I thought to myself, I'm 13 years old, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm asking those questions now. Because I was a pretty serious kid. And I thought, well, those are normal questions for me. Why would it be down the road later? So I think that Who are we? We're spiritual beings having a human experience. What am I here for? I think I'm here to learn that. I think I'm here to learn how to be love, how to see God in everything, to celebrate each day of my life, and to feel joy in all things. I believe that's why I'm here. And where am I going? That's still a question. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but maybe that's the next incarnation. I'm going to encourage us this morning not to do what happened in the movie, not to wait till something dire happens in our lives to decide that these questions are important, and to decide that our lives are worth feeling joy, being kind, being compassionate, being love, and learning whatever path we choose about what is true. It's your fourth tenet. We are free to learn together and to search for what is true. Search for what is true for you. Don't take my word for it. Search for what is true for you, what is indelibly true for you, and then live it. Otherwise, we'll seem to get stuck, or we'll remain stuck, and we'll say, I want to. So I want to be more peaceful. I want to, I want to change. I want to be more. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to be this. I want to be that. Wanting never got us anywhere. Just like trying doesn't get us anywhere. Just do it. Be it. Give yourself permission to be the best you that you can be. If not now, when? So what is truth then? I think we can look around at the world and take succor and comfort from what we see, with eyes that are clear to see. Because around us, we cannot help, and I'm not talking exclusively about inhumanity when I say that around us we can look and we can see intelligence. We can see intelligence in how the world works. And how the world works, it spins on its axis. The balance of the moon's activity and gravity and centrifugal force all at one time gives life the possibility on this planet to a very sophisticated extent. That's intelligence. The organization of molecules in a leaf, that's intelligence. A baby growing from a single cell in a human body into a full human being, that's intelligence. There's intelligence. And things are harmonious. Trees don't fight with each other. The sun doesn't struggle to get up in the morning. It's balanced and orderly. That's clear. And obviously life is designed to work well. The variable lies in us. If it doesn't work well, we're doing something about it. Because life out there, nature, the cosmos, it all works perfectly. Everything works perfectly in its perfect way. And God knows it's abundant. My word. There are 5 quintillion insects on this planet. That's abundance. I don't understand the reason for half of them, but hey, I'm sure there's a reason. There's the grains of sand on a beach, the number of leaves on the trees, the amount of air we have to breathe, the amount of water on the planet. My goodness, there's abundance everywhere. And I believe that as there are physical laws, there are spiritual laws also. We know there are laws of aerodynamics and laws of gravity and laws of evolution. We know those things. Can we not also believe there's laws of correspondence and laws of attraction in the spiritual realm? I believe that's true. I believe that we are much more powerful than we know. That each one of us has the power to choose. And what we choose and what we believe in, those backward swimming fish, becomes the tapestry of our lives. I'd rather have my fish swim forward. by being open and moving our bloated nothingness out of the way, our human illusions, we can begin to see that it is all really connected somehow, that it's all really one thing, and that we're part of that one thing that is intelligent, that is love and law, and that is something within us. We desire to know it. We can know it. Someone named Ron Smotherman, one of my favorite authors, wrote a book called Winning Through Enlightenment. He's a light-hearted fellow. And he said, either God is everything, or there is no God. If God is, God is. If God isn't, God isn't. Your beliefs do not determine what is and what isn't in the absolute. And even more simply, he says simply, what is, and what isn't, isn't. Our quest is to figure out what is true. And that is a worthwhile path and journey. And I believe that all of us sitting here are on that journey, or we wouldn't be sitting here this morning. The priority for me in explaining concepts has always been to explain application. How do we do this thing? How do we move from here to there? How do we become more aware beings? How do we choose to live joyfully, peacefully, and be more kind, compassionate, and loving? How do we do that? I believe in a spiritual law of correspondence and a law of attraction. I believe that what we are, we attract. What we believe becomes the tapestry of our life. I believe that. And the fellow who founded religious science, which is my discipline, he talked about something called the law of normal standard. And the law of normal standard is basically whatever we believe life to be, it will be for us. Whatever we think normal is, normal will be for us. In other words, if we think life is consistent struggle, that's what we're going to have, is consistent struggle. If we believe life is designed to work well, and life is supportive of itself as me, then that's what I'll have. I'll have a life filled with peace and joy and support from various aspects of my world. I believe that that is a law. It's briefly translated into what we expect we get, to put it in simple terms. Our thoughts do become things. Wayne Dyer said, think of every thought you have as expanding. Every thought you have is expanding. And emotions, our emotions are good things. Emotions are not what we are, they are what we have. It is the color palette of life, how we feel. And feelings are important. It's paramount in our quest for truth, whatever our path is, to understand that truth is so much more powerful than untruth. Because truth doesn't change, and truth is always truth. The nature of things is always the nature of things. What is temporary is simply temporary and passing through, and what is unlike that, however it may express, is simply unlike that and cannot endure. We can think about that with evil, by the way. If we think about the world, and there's a lot of turmoil in the world right now. I'm not going to avoid it. There is. However, if we think about the entire world and how many people there are in the world, it's evident to me that there's a lot more good people in the world, people who are focusing on being good, focusing on being love, kind to each other and whatever, than there are the other kind. Because otherwise, it'd be a lot worse. And it would be a lot worse. So I choose to focus on that and celebrate that. And know that the spirit that is the indelible truth. I call it God, whatever you want to call it. And that God, that spiritual presence, that spiritual essence is in the midst of whatever turmoil exists. And doing its good work, even if I can't see it. And that's what I know. And that's what I affirm, and that's what I look for. Ernest Holmes who founded religious science, gave a talk at an annual conference at Asilomar in California, which ended up being his last talk early in the 60s. It's a famous speech he gave, and it ended up being called The Sermon by the Sea. And in it he says, "It seems to me that only as we view all life, everything from what we call the great to what we call small, unimportant, important or unimportant, it is only as we view the whole thing as one stupendous whole, whose body and nature is with God the soul, that we shall really enter into communion, into sympathetic oneness and rapport with the reality of all that is about us." When we think of the unity of all things, of how the planet itself works, we can start with the small, easy things. We can start with the small, easy things, the small kindnesses in life. Getting up and deciding that today I'm going to be the best me I can be. I'm going to be kind, loving, and compassionate today in everything I do. I'm going to have joy in this day. I'm going to experience it. I choose to. How about that for a morning wake-up affirmation? Robert Schuller, in his book, Power Thoughts, he said, "Polish the windows of your soul and use what works for you." I like that. Polish the windows of your soul. See with clearer eyes. Even people who struggle. And generally speaking, if someone's being ugly, and people can be ugly, I think, I had someone be really rude to me in a parking lot recently. I forget what happened. But he thought I was in the wrong, and I really wasn't. He was backing out, that's what it was. And I was like right behind him. So I honked my horn because I wanted him to avert hitting me, which he was going to do because he was backing up. And I pulled forward. Well, he pulled in after me and screamed at me at the top of his lungs, "Didn't you see me pulling out or backing out?" And screamed at me. He said it with some colorful language. And my thought really honestly was, wow, he's really having a bad day, isn't he? He's really in a bad spot in his life to react that strongly over something, that really wasn't on the scale of my life very important, And I'm thinking, poor guy. And I did a little prayer for him. Instead of getting angry, that was my compassionate act, was not to react at the level of what he was spitting out at me. And just understand that it was more about him than it was me. Bless his heart, So let us work to more fully realize the indelible and ineffable truth of our being. We are spiritual beings having a human experience in the quest to understand our spiritual selves. Whew. It's like the old story of where the thing about God talking and saying, "The truth, where will I hide it?" And he went through the exercise of, at the bottom of the deepest sea? No, surely they'll get there and they'll find it. Hide it on the top of the highest mountain. No, they'll probably get up there too. Where can I hide it? I know, I'll put it inside them. They'll never look there. And that leads me to how we can get through it. We can have faith. Not blind faith, but a reasoned faith. Faith in something greater than ourselves. That's immediate and right here. Faith. What is faith? Paul in the Bible said that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. Again, with Ernest Holmes, he said faith is an affirmative approach to reality. In order to have faith, we must have a conviction that all is well. In order to keep faith, we must not allow a thing to enter our thought which will weaken this conviction. Ooh. Faith is built up from belief, acceptance, and trust. And how do we build faith? Moment by moment by moment. Faith in ourselves. Faith that love is really powerful. Faith in something greater that made whatever is, an intelligence and creative power in the universe, whatever one chooses that to be. We can approach life continually with humor, determination, and enthusiasm. The philosopher Kierkegaard said the comic and the tragic touch each other at the absolute point of infinity. It's a real gift in the midst of difficulty to have a sense of humor. It tends to leave us rapidly, but we can. We can. All we have to do is imagine that whatever we're concerned about, whatever's really engaging us and gripping us, is happening to someone else. What advice would we give them? Generally speaking, we get more lighthearted about it real fast. The opposite of joy is not sorrow, it is unbelief. And in The Humor of Christ by Elton Trueblood, he said, we can be gay not because we are blind to injustice or suffering, but because we are convinced that these, in light of the divine sovereignty, are never ultimate. That's what I said. The truth is the good stuff. The truth is peace. The truth is harmony. The truth is love. The truth is wholeness. The truth is abundance. The truth is ease. Nature doesn't struggle. The truth is all of those wonderful things. What is unlike that is division, duality, struggle, conflict, hatred. Those are not enduring verities in life. They're not. And they don't have a life of their own. They only have the life that people give them. Give that. So they cannot be enduring in and of themselves. It is only when we give them attention and importance, not that we are not compassionate, not that we don't give of ourselves where there's a need and send love where there needs to be love, but just that we don't enshrine it and build monuments to pain and suffering and violence and difficulty. Then we are helping the world. It's not being compassionate, I promise you, it isn't. But we can have humor. We can see humor not as a way of denying the tears, but rather a way of affirming something deeper, which is deeper than our tears, something more enduring. And we can be determined. We can be determined to be the best us that we can be. We can be determined to be kind, loving, and compassionate all the time. We can be determined to wake up and live an awakened, enlightened life, embracing all of life and seeing the good where there's good to be seen.